You forgot the first rule of remakes, Jill. Don't fuck with the original.
Hey everybody, The Amazing Spider-Man 2 is coming to theaters this Friday, and you know what that means?
It means we need to release this podcast really fast before we lose the license.
Something like that. It also means another episode of Don't F with the Original.
With Nicholas, I'm the vegan correspondent for Idiomatic.
And I'm Dimitri, editor-in-chief of Idiomatic.com and movie critic. Whenever there's a new movie coming out that's part of a franchise, we review the movie that started it all, and then use that review to gauge our expectations about the latest entry in the franchise.
Yes.
In this case, that means reviewing Sam Raimi's Spider-Man.
Yeah.
So, how'd you feel about the movie?
When it came out, I loved it. It was one of the first superhero movies that came out that was really exploring the superhero. But right now, I think it didn't age very well. And I'm feeling so-so about it right now as we speak.
I have always been less of a fan of Spider-Man, the movie, and more of an apologist for it, in the sense that I've always seen the flaws that the people who don't like it see. But I always argued that the good parts sort of made the bad parts forgivable. And after The Amazing Spider-Man came out, I feel very differently about it, whereas I find The Amazing Spider-Man got it right, whereas Spider-Man did not.
Okay.
And I realize I'm in the minority. I know most people love Spider-Man Sam Raimi version and hate The Amazing Spider-Man. But we'll talk more in detail about it right now after the synopsis.
All right. Well, the synopsis, it's your basic origin story of Spider-Man. Spider-Man is Peter Parker. He lives with his Aunt May and Uncle Ben. He likes this girl next door called Mary Jane. One day he gets bitten by a weird mutant spider, and he gains the power of that spider. He gets to stick to wall, he gets super strength, he shoots webbing, and he decides to fight crime as Spider-Man. Yeah,
and in the movie there's also a villain.
Yeah, well, okay. Yeah, in the movie as well, a classic villain of Spider-Man, the Green Goblin, who is Norman Osborn, the head of Oscorp. He has a contract with the military to, sell a glider and a formula that would give super strength to a soldier. He tries it on himself, and he goes crazy, and he starts eliminating all of his,
competitors, enemies, fighters, yeah.
Exactly.
And Spider-Man's gonna stop him!
Exactly.
Yeah. Here's what I find intriguing. You gave your synopsis, and I think it's pretty detailed and pretty specific about what the movie's about, and yet the narration of the movie itself would strangely disagree. Because the movie starts with this line from voiceover Peter Parker, played by Tobey Maguire, saying, like any story, this story is about a girl. And yet, when you give your synopsis, it ain't about a girl.
I know.
And when I watched the movie, it wasn't about a girl either.
Yeah, that girl was so uninteresting, honestly, and I could feel so little chemistry. It's not about the girl. Really, it's really not.
And I want to talk about that romance specifically because I think that's where the movie lets me down mostly. But let's talk about some of the good stuff first. Some of the things that I find make the movie still worthwhile to a certain degree. And certainly help pioneer much better movies down the line, including for Spider-Man 2, which was, for a very long time, the best superhero movie out there.
Yeah.
One of the great things about it is Sam Raimi's energy as a filmmaker. He invented the Spider-Cam, where to allow Spider-Man to swing and let the audience feel what it is to have that freedom to swing in New York in the air. He invented a system of pulleys that allowed the camera to just go, up and down the streets of New York, and then they digitized the Spider-Man character over it. And it's there the feeling of elation that comes from these shots, yet you really feel how much freedom Peter Parker must feel from being able to do this finally.
Yeah.
Those are breathtaking shots, but it puts you in the right frame of mind to just want to celebrate this guy.
Honestly, that also makes me realize why, all the early video games about Spider-Man kind of sucked, because it was like 2D and it was just him punching guys. And when the 3D came along and you actually were able to swing on buildings and you had the freedom to, go wherever you want, that's what made the Spider-Man video games really fun. And, you really like that freedom, and you can really experience it in that movie where it's like, wow, this is, it's even better than a video game. This is what it would actually be like to be Spider-Man. You're swinging and you're jumping and you're flipping everywhere. And yeah, that was one part of the movie I really enjoyed as well.
Yeah, and the color palette is very colorful. It really evokes the Steve Ditko era of the comic. It's very primary colors. It's sort of the palette with which Sam Raimi is composing this movie.
Yeah.
The acting from some of the side characters evokes that really well when they're good. So J.K. Simmons plays Jonah Jameson, and he's great because he's so cartoony.
He's the best character in the movie, to be 100% honest. You know, he plays such an asshole, but he's such a likable asshole nonetheless. You know, he's like, yeah, he is J. Jonah Jameson from the comic book. You know, it's exactly what he is.
Yeah, you forgive him for being an asshole because you don't believe in him in a literal sense.
Yeah.
Because he's just so larger than life, and like this character would never exist in real life, but that's okay. It's great. And then they give him some of the redeeming things, such as his journalistic integrity and all of that. Like he protects his sources and all of that.
Yeah.
That's fun.
He offers Peter a basket of meat for Christmas. That was the best, one of the best lines.
And Norman Osborn, who's played by Willem Dafoe.
Willem Dafoe, yeah.
He's also really good in that same cartoony way. He has, when he goes crazy, he flips-flops between like sort of put upon generous Norman Osborn to evil Green Goblin. In sort of like in a fraction of a second, he'll flip, and his facial expressions, and when he flips, it's like this petty little angry child going like, "You're not going to tell me what to do," and it's adorable and hilarious, and that's what the Green Goblin should be.
Yeah. To be fair, Defoe, you know, has the face to make those little expressions there. No, I don't think any other actor could have pulled it off. But yeah, as you know, regular Norman Osborn, he's such a nice guy, and you feel that he's being screwed over, you know, by the world. The military says we never wanted to give you the contract in the first place. He's like, what the hell? And then the board sells his company from under him. You're like, my God, people are being such assholes then that you feel so bad for him that you're almost sort of rooting for the Green Goblin to a certain point. You're like, you know what? I don't feel that bad. But yeah, you could really see, the Goblin is trying to help him to be fair, and you can see like the difference here. That's another good thing I like.
Yeah, I mean, there's this scene where they're having Thanksgiving dinner. And he starts wanting to eat before they say grace, and Aunt May just like slaps him on the hand, go over and say grace. He turns to her and like almost growls, but not really. Like he growls only with a grimace, but you look at that grimace and you hear the growling, and that's Willem Dafoe's amazing performance there. And it's it's so funny.
Yeah, I also liked Bruce Campbell's cameo. You know, he's like the human spider. I was like, man, that sucks immediately. He's like just great. Also, Bonesaw, who was played by Macho Man Randy Savage, is like great performance. He's like the most outrageous wrestler out there, and they had him there pretty much being himself, but with a different name. He was really funny, just passing the chair and some rebar piece of metal to beat Spider-Man. That was pretty funny. And yeah, but it's funny how like all the side characters are really memorable, and the main ones are like, oh, okay, they're there.
Yeah. I don't like Aunt May.
I like her.
I find her too generic. Like she should be on the box of pancake powder. And I realize that that's a little bit how the character is written. But I find that for us to feel for a character, she has to be a little bit more than that. Okay. If you look at The Amazing Spider-Man, they chose Sally Field, and she adds a real sort of, not just this like perfect little aunt character, but this sort of really motherly quality to her that she probably would have since she did raise Peter, which I found was missing in this performance.
I don't know. Maybe they made her really, really nice to contrast with Mary Jane's father for no reason whatsoever, because that was never followed up in any movie. So I don't know. But in the comic book, she's just a really nice, well-intentioned person that just really looks out for Peter, and very disappointed when he doesn't do good. So
she's more than that, though. Like especially in the modern issues of Spider-Man, when it's revealed that she kind of knew all along he was Spider-Man, and she just sort of let her nephew have that secret and waited for him to be ready to tell her and things like that. And she cleverly covers for him in the background without him ever really realizing. Like, she's a much more interesting character, certainly in the modern comic books. And here, like, she's really just like, here's an old person that's a nice old person.
Yeah, she's someone's grandma, pretty much.
Thank you. That's exactly it. I find that she should be a mother, not a grandmother.
Okay.
And that's what bugs me about it. And again, it's not the actress. I think she plays the role as written perfectly well. I think they wrote the Aunt May character a little bit bland, a little bit archetypal, where they could have had a real character there.
Okay. Yeah, it makes sense.
The problem I have with them, though, that I know you don't agree with, I don't like Tobey Maguire as Spider-Man.
Okay.
I know you disagree, so let's start with the positive. Do you like Tobey Maguire as Spider-Man?
I think he's fine. I think he can play nerdy and a little bit charismatic as Peter Parker, which is what you expect. And you don't see him that much as Spider-Man, but he can deliver the lines as Spider-Man. He works with the dialogue he's given. So I really like it, but the important part is the Peter Parker part, where he's trying to be charming and, he's still a little nerdy and he has this crush on Mary Jane and he's just... He can really play like, I can really see the nerd that's trying to, talk to a girl that's way out of his league, or as he feels is way out of his league, So I really like his performance there.
Yeah, see, I like Tobey Maguire as an actor in general. Like, when they announced him, I was actually excited. I was like, oh, cool, like, I like Tobey Maguire in anything. I'll like him in that. And then when I saw it, he annoyed me, is what it comes down to. Okay. And again, and maybe it's the way it's written, and he's just playing it as it's written on the page. But he's less of a guy who's learned the value of responsibilities as much as a guy who's crippled by guilt, the way he plays it. He is so put upon by the gift of Spider-Man. He is so like, if I don't do this, Uncle Ben's gonna die again. Like, in his performance, he's so like there's a giant metallic rod like stuck in his ass in the way he plays him.
Okay.
And I don't like that. And to a degree, maybe that's how he plays a nerd. You know what I mean? Like, because a nerd is supposed to be a little bit socially awkward.
Yeah.
But he loses my sympathy by doing that, because at one point I begin to think, like, maybe you're being bullied because you don't know how to behave in a social setting. And that doesn't mean that justifies bullying people. Like, like if you see somebody who's socially awkward, like, lay off him, give him a chance to sort of blossom instead of being a dick to him. Like, that's just, human decency.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I don't feel like I want to identify with him, because that crippling guilt makes him less of a responsible person. His actions, the way he interprets the world, is like, well, if I don't do this, the universe is gonna punish me, so I have to do this. It's like, that's not something I can celebrate as much as, like, look, I made a mistake in my life, and I want to live my life without these mistakes anymore. He's not authoritarian about responsibility, and that makes him less heroic for me. But let's go back to the one we all agree on. Mary Jane Watson is just, it's an unfortunate casting choice, because I don't find that Kirsten Dunst really brings anything palpable to the role.
No.
And it's even more unfortunate because the role as is written is outright detestable. And this is where I want to compare it to Amazing Spider-Man a little bit.
Okay.
Because this is where the movie lets me down. The love story between Mary Jane and Peter Parker, which is advertised in the first line of the voiceover as being what the story is about.
Yeah.
Is the one thing that really, really doesn't work about this movie.
Yeah. Why does he like her, really? Because she's good looking, I guess, and then that's it.
Yeah, that's part of the problem. We're never given a reason why she likes why he likes her.
Yeah.
And it's very irritating, because it starts with him running after the bus, and then she gets up and tells the bus driver, well, look, you've been making him run for like 5 blocks. Can you stop that? And you're like, okay, I might like Mary Jane. She stands up for him. Good for her. Okay, I might get behind her. I think somebody should report this bus driver, because he's clearly abusive.
Yeah.
But
pretty much.
Then he gets in, and then she sits down and refuses to give him eye contact, because she doesn't want to be associated with the big ball of scum that he apparently is.
Yeah. And
then you're like, why do you like this girl, Peter? Like, she won't even stand up for you as far as you can see. You don't know what she did in the background. And why do you value this girl who lives next to you, you've seen all her plays, you used to be friends in kindergarten, and then won't even fucking look at you now because she wants to perpetuate the image of you as garbage?
Yeah.
And it makes me angry at her, and it makes me angry at Peter for liking her. And they never change her. She never matures. The only reason she gives Peter Parker any attention is because he keeps saying these sweet things about her, and she was like, oh, I like that validation.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's not a likable character. You know what I mean? Like, if you compare it to Gwen Stacy in Amazing Spider-Man, I'm going to do that a couple of times, is Gwen Stacy in Amazing Spider-Man is like this girl who's like, who stands up for the weak. Like, when, like, there's this great scene in Amazing Spider-Man, and a lot of people criticize it because they go like, oh, well, if he already knew to stand up for the weak people before he got his powers, what's the point of the story? And it's like, I think the story becomes more complicated. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But he stands up for a nerd who's getting beat up by Flash Thompson.
Yeah.
So Flash Thompson turns his attention to Peter and beats the shit out of Peter.
Yeah.
And then Gwen Stacy comes like, you're not going to beat up a girl, so I'm telling you, stop now. And you're like, okay, now I like all of them.
Yeah.
You know, all of them have a moral cord. I go, well, of course Peter likes Gwen, because Gwen and Peter share this idea that you can't beat up on the weak like that. That's not cool.
Okay.
You know, okay, I can get behind this couple. And she's witty, she's funny. When he becomes Spider-Man and she talks to him, and he calls her, goes like, you're in danger, you gotta get out of the lab. It's like, yeah, but I'm creating the formula that's gonna save the city. It's like, no, get out, the bad guy's coming. And she's like, oh, I'll help people evacuate. And he hangs up. He's like, God damn it, are you kidding me? Yeah. But again, I can root for these people because they're courageous, they're brave, they're thoughtful. Mary Jane is none of those things. She's awful.
I don't know why exactly she's in the origin story nonetheless, because she only came in like way later.
Yeah.
You really don't need her in your origin story. I think this movie had so many like wink winks of, you know, hey, this character is in the comic book, you know, when he gets the check and you meet Betty that works at the, you know, the newspaper. What is her role afterwards? She just completely disappears, you know. She's just, hey, I'm there.
In defense of that thing, though,
yeah.
If you don't know who Betty is,
yeah.
she's a girl who gives him a check. So it's not like she detracts from the story.
Yeah, I guess, but if we didn't have that scene, I wouldn't know that Peter got a check for his pictures.
No, because he discusses how he feels about his new job, how he feels about J. Jonah.
Okay.
It's an exposition.
I guess. But, you know, I think it was too early for Mary Jane in this movie. There was too much stuff going on. And they just threw her in because, you know, well, it's Spider-Man. You need Mary Jane immediately, you know.
Yeah, I think that's the spirit behind it.
Which I think was a mistake.
In the comic books, Gwen Stacy and Mary Jane both coexisted.
Yeah.
And one was Betty, one was Veronica.
Indeed.
Gwen was Betty. Mary Jane was Veronica. She was self-assured. She didn't need Peter. She didn't need Spider-Man. She was this woman that was very appealing because she didn't give a shit. Like, yeah. she thought she was hot stuff, and she was, and she kept flaunting it, and she doesn't give a damn. So, at the same time that she's sort of obnoxious, she's also strangely appealing because of that confidence.
Okay.
And Gwen Stacy was that a little bit more girl next door girl. She was really nice, she was really giving, but she was a little bit more damselly in distress.
Yeah. Comic book spoiler warning for people, you know, who haven't read the comic books, but it's his first girlfriend, and she basically dies.
But when they did that, which was an iconic scene, but also possibly the worst mistake in Spider-Man writing history, they eliminated the balance. So now they had Mary Jane, and she was a little bit too evil-y in her attitude, without actually being evil.
Yeah. For
her to keep that way, so they turned her into a half Gwen, half Mary Jane hybrid, and that's what she became in the comics forever on. And she became a particularly boring, uninteresting character as a result. And
that's what she's in the movie, so touche, I guess.
And that's the version of the character we have in the movie. That's actually her. She has all of the I'm starved for attention aspects of Mary Jane in the comics, but she has none of the self-reliance. She is always looking for other people for validation. She has none of that aggressivity that sort of balances out her more selfish attitudes. She's just this amalgam of like, I'm a woman, therefore I need. And it's very off-putting to watch this in 2014.
Yeah. She looks like, you know, I'm going to go date the flavor of the month at this point, you know.
Yeah, well, she dates Norman Osborn.
No.
No, not Norman. Sorry, Harry Osborn. Yeah. So that's Norman's son, who's played by James Franco, who's also one of the good actors in the movie. I think he's absolutely delightful, a great presence in the movie. And I almost wish that he had landed the role of Spider-Man instead of Tobey Maguire.
Not nerdy enough.
I think you add a pair of glasses to him, he would have made it work. So she's dating him. Then she sees Peter, and she knows that they're roommates and best friends. And she starts flirting with Peter and trying to get Peter to ask her out. Presumably she'll go out with him if he does, or not. Maybe she's just a cock tease. I have no idea.
Who knows? Yeah.
But like in the best case scenario, she'll want to go out with him if he does ask her, and then he never has the courage for it. Again, not making Peter particularly sympathetic, because it was like, get a pair of balls, just ask the girl out.
Yeah.
But they're roommates, they're best friends. You know you're gonna tear that friendship apart if you do that, and then she's just doing it anyway. And again, I hate her.
Yeah.
And then there's later in the movie, Harry's getting cussed out by his father, who's of course crazy at this point because he's Green Goblin-y.
Yeah. And
he says like really awful things about Mary Jane, going like, oh, she's just a whore and she wants your money.
Yeah.
Which is terrible. And Harry's going like, no, this girl really matters to me. And then he was like, Harry, I don't give a shit what you think. Like, and he's being super verbally abusive towards his son. And you know that Harry has lived with that for a very long time in his life. He's very, like, not necessarily that Green Goblin level of abuse, but he clearly has daddy issues from when he was even a teenager.
Well, his father, he cared for him, but he was stern, It seems from,
Yeah, exactly.
From what the scenes you have with them.
So Mary Jane overhears that and he comes back, and like, here's what a normal empathetic person would do is like, oh my God, I didn't realize that's why you had daddy issues, that your father talks to you that way.
Yeah.
And do you want to sit down? You want to talk? Like, that was awful. Fuck that guy. No, she goes like, well, thanks for standing up for me, which he did.
Yes.
And then storms out and goes like, well, your father, like, she doesn't say it, but she communicates by storming out that, like, your father's right, you're a piece of shit. Like, that's what she's doing. She's horrible.
But that also goes for a bunch of scenes like that seems like, well, that's not what happened. What are you talking about? Like, for example, when the fight between Peter and Flash Thompson, Peter was, pretty much, not fighting him at all and just defending himself. And he basically just pushed him off with one hand. And he didn't know how strong he was, but he just with one hand. And all of a sudden it turns out he beat the crap out of Flash Thompson. No, he was defending himself. And like the later scene is like, why did you beat that guy up? You shouldn't. Like, he didn't beat him up. He just pushed him away. It's like the movie doesn't know from scene to scene what happened next sometimes. It's just weird.
It is ropey writing, isn't it? Well, actually, let's get to the structure of the story since you bring it up.
Yeah.
The structure of the story is really weird because I find that Spider-Man has one of the single best origin stories in all of comicdom.
Yeah.
I think that story alone could make a great movie if you sort of flourish it a little bit.
Yeah, stretch it out.
Yeah, stretch it out. Make it a drama about the characters. You could have an amazing movie. The problem with that is anybody who goes to see a superhero movie will be like, don't give me that mundane drama, give me a supervillain.
Yeah.
Which is what they end up doing. So what they end up doing is the first third of the movie is Amazing Fantasy 15.
Yeah, pretty much.
And a fairly good recreation of that. I think I like overall how it's done.
Yeah.
And then, meanwhile, the Green Goblin, and then he fights the Green Goblin. And it's like, there's no connective tissue there. It's just like...
The Green Goblin just decides, maybe we should work with Spider-Man. He'd be awesome on our side. And then that's it.
Yeah.
And then that's the link. Yeah, exactly.
It's just so random and sort of unappealing to watch, where you're like, what the hell's going on with this movie?
But I think you're right that people would not have wanted just to be the final bad guy, to be the guy that shot Uncle Ben. That would have been, I don't know, he fights the guy in the warehouse, he has a gun. That would have been a little anticlimactic, I think. So I think
it's not summer blockbuster.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I don't think people have gone for, we'll give you a cool villain next time, just watch this origin story now. Which is,
especially in 2002, like, I think maybe you could get away with it now.
Yeah.
Because we're used to multi-movie franchises and, movies being to be continued now. It's sort of the thing, I'm thinking of the Hunger Games, most of the Avengers, Marvel movies.
Yeah.
Twilight, what is it, like 6th movie at this point?
Yeah.
Yeah, and the fucking thing never ends, Watch the second to last Twilight movie.
Yeah.
Breaking Dawn Part 1. It's like, it's a wedding and a honeymoon, and then she gets pregnant and she has a baby, and then the bad guy will show up next episode. Like, it's really like, what the hell? But the truth is, we're at a stage now where we accept that sort of thing. I know most people are not fans of Twilight that are listening to this podcast, but you can do the same thing with a superhero movie now.
Yeah, no, the fans of Twilight totally accepted that. It's
Yeah.
like, if you like Twilight and you went to that movie, you were perfectly fine with it. I'm pretty sure one of the Harry Potters was like that as well, where they spent a whole movie camping.
Oh yeah, the second to last one was
It's it's them camping, and it was like, if you don't want to watch it, I guess you could just skip to the next one,
You could, but the thing is, we care about the characters, so we watch a movie, and it's not like it's boring. It's like there's character interaction. We get to know how Harry feels about things, and that's important. And I think you could have had that in Spider-Man today, but not in 2002.
Yeah, all right. Other stuff I didn't quite like about that movie. The Green Goblin is one of my favorite villains in the comic books and even in the cartoon. The way they made him look here was just pathetic. The mask was just... I don't understand why they didn't do the mask like the proper mask with the lips that move and not just this open mouth, terrible looking flat mask. It was just so stupid.
Yeah, well, the conceit in the movie is that it's military armor and they gave it a military helmet sort of feel to it. And it looks like a goblin, and Sam Raimi actually said that in an interview. It looks like a goblin because he found that in a lot of military projects, they'll draw like big or shark mouth on their planes and stuff like that. It's common for them to do that. It's a way to psych yourself up and psych out the enemy as well. So that's the conceit behind it, and I agree with you. It's too bad because it looks like shit. It doesn't look good. And two, I find that it's essential to the Green Goblin character that he wears a rubber mask. I don't even care if it looks goofy. It could look like a Halloween mask. It could look like the mask from Michael Myers in Halloween, just painted green. I don't care.
Yeah.
Because it goes with the goofiness of the Goblin. That dude is insane. That's the idea behind it.
And and they had drawings and sketches, and even for an actual Goblin mask that looked great. He looked actually like the one in the comic books, but I think they scrapped it and made it more practical, I guess, which is. It's a comic book movie. There's a guy that throws web from his wrist. It doesn't have to be practical. I mean, I guess nowadays you would totally buy that, but I guess early on, those really early comic book movies, people needed more logic, which is weird.
I think you're right, though. I think I don't know if people would have taken it or not taken it. It's, in retrospect, it's hard to say what the audience would have been capable of taking or not taking, but I think the studios were afraid that the audience wouldn't be able to take it. There was a very awkward phase in the beginning of the aughts in superhero movies where superhero movies were starting to pop out one after the other, but all of them apologized for being superhero movies.
Yeah.
And all of them claimed to transcend the genre because they didn't want to stay in the genre, you know what I mean?
Another scene I didn't like was the end piece, where he's on the bridge, and I don't know what the project on the next movie is, so maybe it's spoilers for the next Amazing Spider-Man movies, but that bridge and that scene is where
Gwen
Stacy dies. Basically, Goblin knows who Spider-Man is. He guesses Peter Parker, and he brings Gwen Stacy there, and she falls off the bridge, and Spider-Man tries to catch her, and in that process, he snaps her neck. And that's one of the iconic scenes in the comic book, so I'm guessing that's why they wanted to put that bridge in the movie, but to have Mary Jane there and have Peter save her, it's completely out of whack.
Yeah, what makes the scene iconic is the cruel irony that happens. Because he's doing the right thing. He's saving his girlfriend from the Green Goblin, and then ends up killing her in the process. And that's devastating. And that's why we all remember it at that scene where the hero didn't save the day, and not only that, he didn't save the day not because he was too late, not because he was not strong enough, not because he was too lazy. No, he did everything right. He died because the universe is a cruel, cruel place for Spider-Man.
Yeah.
And it's heartbreaking. It's a powerful, powerful, powerful moment. And in this one, they're like, yeah, we're going to evoke that, but not evoke any of the actual emotional ramifications and the power of the actual scene. We're just going to say, oh, yeah, we've seen that scene too. We didn't understand it, but we've seen it.
Yeah, we've seen it. We perused through the comic books and, oh, look, that looks cool, and it's no, you just didn't get it. Even the dilemma, Green Goblin has, well, you're going to save your girlfriend or all these people? And it's he saves them in 5 seconds.
I know.
The scene is over. You're well, gee, thank you. That was very heart-wrenching here.
It's weird. I don't know. I want to stress how much I love the energy that Sam Raimi brings to the story. Just, at a time when the idea of a Spider-Man movie wasn't really possible, let alone one that allows you to feel what it would be like to be Spider-Man.
Yeah.
That's an achievement no one can ever take away from the 2002 Spider-Man film. It's pioneering in that sense, but God, that story doesn't make a fucking ounce of sense, and I can't bring myself to care.
Yeah. Yeah, the more that you mentioned the separation of the Green Goblin story versus, the Spider-Man story, it's like, yeah, especially when they meet, at that celebration where the Green Goblin kills, like, his board members who were actually being terrible assholes. You're like...
Yeah, that doesn't justify murder, though, in fairness.
Still, you can't feel bad for him at that point. You're like, yeah, okay, well, yeah, for these guys, I don't feel as bad as the other 2 times he killed where, they're a bunch of innocent people.
Yeah.
These guys were, pretty much made to be assholes in the movie, being smug with the tea there and everything. You're like, okay, we're supposed to hate them, and now, he kills them. You're like, okay, I guess.
Yeah, no, but I mean, like, it's a representation of the challenge he faced in his origin story, in fairness.
Yeah.
Because he could have stopped the guy that robbed the wrestler organization owner thing,
Yeah.
guy. And the wrestler owner guy is a dick.
That's true.
So it's sort of the same representation, but this
You're
time
right.
Spider-Man goes like, no, I'm going to do something.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure how he explained to Mary Jane that he knew her name while saving her, but it's like...
here's how you resolve that plot hole. Mary Jane's a dumbass. Even by 2002 standards, honestly, that character, that female character, is way behind the times. This is not okay.
But yeah, in 2002, the movie was more entertaining to me, though. Now it's like, yeah, it's okay. I was more amused by the cameos and the side characters than I was by the actual story, to be honest, Every time Jameson appeared, I was like, had the smile on my face. Like, what's he gonna do next? What's he gonna do next? So, yeah.
No, for sure. I agree with that. What carried me, like I mentioned before, is really the energy of the filmmaking itself, like the camera tricks and all of that. That's what I found amazing.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's one of those movies that I think shines a little bit despite its screenplay.
Yeah.
Essentially what Sam Raimi did was try to evoke the joy and excitement of the Stan Lee Steve Ditko era in the 60s.
Yeah.
I think he did an overall good job in the 3 movies. I think the reason why Venom doesn't work is because Venom wasn't created in the 60s. He's not part of that paradigm.
Of course not.
Which is why I like The Amazing Spider-Man. I realize that that's a controversial opinion in and of itself. But The Amazing Spider-Man is all about doing Michael J. Bendis's The Ultimate Spider-Man. And it translates that idea really, really well. So if you read Ultimate Spider-Man and you liked it, you're going to love Amazing Spider-Man.
Okay.
But if you're one of those readers who go like, I don't like Ultimate Spider-Man, I like my old Stan Lee Spider-Man, then yeah, you're not going to like Amazing Spider-Man as much, and you have every right to. That's not the movie you wanted to see. But I found that's not the same thing as saying it's a bad movie.
Okay.
I wanted Ultimate Spider-Man because I like Michael J. Bendis' work on that. He's a more full-rounded character. He's a little bit more modern. Okay. He's a modern geek. He's not the old... socially awkward nerd. He's the I just don't have the charisma to be at the top of the food chain in high school geek.
Okay.
And he's more interesting. He has a stronger moral core, and everybody's compromised in that movie is what I love as well. Ben Parker, kind of an idiot. He tries to control Peter at one point by bringing up his Peter's father, and of course that's a super sore point because dude's an orphan.
Yeah.
So he storms off and then runs after him, and that's how he ends up getting shot and all of that. And then the way he ends up getting shot is the guy is trying to run away and has a gun, and Ben Parker tries to stop him and then gets shot in the process. So he's sort of asking for it to a certain degree, you know? But I like that because then the thing is not about like, oh, if you be crippled by guilt and help everybody, otherwise your uncle might die. It becomes about like, no, this is what happens. When you have power, the reason why you have to be responsible and help people with it is because otherwise you leave it to the people who don't have power to try to help. And because they don't have power, they're going to end up getting hurt.
Okay.
And that's a more subtle version of the Marvel. And it's a messier movie, but I think it's a so much smarter movie in terms of its themes.
All right.
Which is why I'm looking forward to The Amazing Spider-Man 2. I'm very, very looking forward. It's the same creative team, it's the same director, it's the same cast. I think Andrew Garfield, I love him as Spider-Man compared to Tobey Maguire.
Yeah.
Emma Stone can do no wrong in my mind, so as Gwen Stacy, she's fantastic.
All right. Are you worried though about the main failing of the third movie was like too many villains, so then you didn't care about any of them?
Mm-hmm.
You think I think I've heard 3 villains in this one as well.
Yeah, let's name them actually.
I think Rhino, Electro, and Green Goblin.
Yeah.
So are you worried that now you have 3 villains again, so you have like what, half an hour for each villain or something like that? It's like not enough time for nothing.
Well, Webb said in interviews, first of all, that the Rhino is on the posters and everything, but he's not a main villain. It's just that every superhero movie has that scene where you kind of sort of catch up with our hero by seeing him beat up some bank robbers.
Okay.
And you went like, well, why make bank robbers when I can just do the Rhino? It'll be more fun.
Yeah.
So he's not really a character, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So, alright, that's fun.
Okay, one down.
Yeah, one down. So then you only have 2 villains. It can be hard to juggle, but one thing we have to remember, this is the era of fucking to be continued movies.
Yeah.
So it's not going to be like what we had in early superhero movies, like Spider-Man 3, where they try to cram all this stuff and try to conclude it. If they don't have space to conclude it, they'll just be like, we'll conclude it in the next movie.
Yeah.
So, on the one hand, that's good because it means the characters won't get shortchanged. On the other hand, I don't like to be continued movies, and I'm generally annoyed by that. So, it's a give and take.
Okay.
Well, how do you feel about the Amazing Spider-Man 2 coming? Like, do you have any trepidations? Or?
Not really. Since like you explained, I know the origin, of the Stan Lee Spider-Man. I didn't read Ultimate because I had very bad experience with Bendis.
Yeah. He wrote the Avengers. His worst run of all his career is Avengers, which I think is what you read.
Right? Which is where I read. So I saw not reading any more Bendis. So never. But I might have to catch up and watch the first one. If I like the characters, I might go out and see the second one. But I'm probably going to wait until I can see it at home. It's not something, the superhero that I'm going to go out and be super excited and see it in the big movie theaters at this point. I'm kind of over the special effect thing, really. Especially, I think the first 3 ones had me fill up on Spider-Man swinging around. So I might just, wait and watch it at home.
Yeah. I'm actually going to be reviewing it, so you can expect a written review of it on Friday at idiomanic.com. Check it out. So... there you go.
Cool.
Yeah. Next week, we will be reviewing The Wizard of Oz in anticipation of some French cartoon that looks absolutely terrible.
Yay.
No, but The Wizard of Oz is what we're going to see, so I'm looking forward to that.
That is a good point.
Until then, if you want to share with us your loves for Sam Raimi's 2002 Spider-Man film, or talk to us about The Amazing Spider-Man, like, if you want to declare, like, oh, you know what? I like The Amazing Spider-Man 2, and make me feel less lonely on the web, like please do. Please do, because I feel like I'm the only guy. You can write us at mail@idiomanic.com or post a comment at idiomanic.com. We're also on Facebook, we're also on Twitter, we're also on iTunes. Please write us a review on iTunes. It would help us get a little bit of more support to continue generating content for you guys. Otherwise, I will have no choice but to force Nick on a blind date with Mary Jane Watson.
Which one?
And I want to talk about that romance specifically because I think that's where the movie lets me down mostly. But let's talk about some of the good stuff first. Some of the things that I find make the movie still worthwhile to a certain degree, and certainly help pioneer much better movies down the line, including for Spider-Man 2, which was, for a very long time, the best superhero movie out there.
Yeah.
One of the great things about it is Sam Raimi's energy as a filmmaker. He invented the Spider Cam, where to allow Spider-Man to swing and let the audience feel what it is to have that freedom to swing in New York in the air. He invented a system of pulleys that allowed the camera to just go, up and down the streets of New York, and then they digitized the Spider-Man character over it. And it's there, the feeling of elation that comes from these shots. Yet you really feel how much freedom Peter Parker must feel from being able to do this finally.
Yeah.
Those are breath.
You forgot the first rule of remakes, Jill. Don't fuck with the original.
Hey everybody, The Amazing Spider-Man 2 is coming to theaters this Friday, and you know what that means?
It means we need to release this podcast really fast before we lose the license.
Something like that. It also means another episode of Don't F with the Original.
With Nicholas, I'm the vegan correspondent for Idiomatic.
And I'm Dimitri, editor-in-chief of Idiomatic.com and movie critic. Whenever there's a new movie coming out that's part of a franchise, we review the movie that started it all, and then use that review to gauge our expectations about the latest entry in the franchise.
Yes.
In this case, that means reviewing Sam Raimi's Spider-Man.
Yeah.
So, how'd you feel about the movie?
When it came out, I loved it. It was one of the first superhero movies that came out that was really exploring the superhero. But right now, I think it didn't age very well, and I'm feeling so-so about it right now as we speak.
I have always been less of a fan of breathtaking shots, but it puts you in the right frame of mind to just want to celebrate this guy.
Honestly, that also makes me realize why, all the early video games about Spider-Man kind of sucked, because it was like 2D and it was just him punching guys. And when the 3D came along and you actually were able to swing on buildings and you had the freedom to, go wherever you want, that's what made the Spider-Man video games really fun. And, you really like that freedom, and you can really experience it in that movie where it's like, wow, this is, it's even better than a video game. This is what it would actually be like to be Spider-Man. You're swinging and you're jumping and you're flipping everywhere. And yeah, that was one part of the movie I really enjoyed as well.
Yeah, and the color palette is very colorful. It really evokes the Steve Ditko era of the comic. It's very primary colors. It's sort of the palette with which Sam Raimi is composing this movie. Yeah. The acting from some of the side characters evokes that really well when they're good. So J.K. Simmons plays Jonah Jameson, and he's great because he's so cartoony.
He's the best character in
Spider-Man, the movie, and more of an apologist for it, in the sense that I've always seen the flaws that the people who don't like it see. But I always argued that the good parts sort of made the bad parts forgivable. And after The Amazing Spider-Man came out, I feel very differently about it, whereas I find The Amazing Spider-Man got it right, whereas Spider-Man did not.
Okay.
And I realize I'm in the minority. I know most people love Spider-Man Sam Raimi version and hate The Amazing Spider-Man. But we'll talk more in detail about it right now after the synopsis.
All right. Well, the synopsis, it's your basic origin story of Spider-Man. Spider-Man is Peter Parker. He lives with his Aunt May and Uncle Ben. He likes this girl next door called Mary Jane. One day he gets bitten by a weird mutant spider, and he gains the power of that spider. He gets to stick to wall, he gets super strength, he shoots webbing, and he decides to fight crime as Spider-Man. Yeah, and
in the movie there's also a villain.
Yeah, well, okay. Yeah, in the movie as well, a classic villain of Spider-Man, the Green Goblin, who is Norman Osborn, the head of Oscorp. He has a contract for the military to, sell a glider and a form that would give super strength to a soldier. He tries it on himself and he goes crazy and he starts eliminating all of his,
competitors, enemies, fighters, yeah.
Exactly.
And Spider-Man's gonna stop him!
Exactly.
Yeah. Here's what I find intriguing. You gave your synopsis, and I think it's pretty detailed and pretty specific about what the movie's about. And yet, the narration of the movie itself would strangely disagree. Because the movie starts with this line from voiceover Peter Parker, played by Tobey Maguire, saying, like any story, this story is about a girl. And yet, when you give your synopsis, it ain't about a girl.
I know.
And when I watched the movie, it wasn't about a girl either.
Yeah, that girl was so uninteresting, honestly, and I could feel so little chemistry. It's not about the girl. Really, it's really not.